Tribunal and 5 justices unanimously struck out the petition of the PDP and its candidate ATIKU Abubakar in the past election. For the next 1 hour, we'll be taking a look at this and would like you to join us on Facebook and YouTube where we're live right now. You can watch us anywhere you are. You can also listen to us anywhere you are. So just head over to our website, nigeriainfo.fm. That's if you are not in Lagos, you can't get us at your end. We're there also on Twitter at nigeriainfo.fm, where we have a lot of scoop that would interest you. Make sure you're following us and put on your notification so you can know every time that we are live. I am Wemimo Adewuni.
I'm Sheriff Quadry. Good morning, Lagos. Barrister Bolanle Olugbani, constitutional lawyer and public affairs analyst, joins us this morning on the program. It's good to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. Now, remember that you can always be a part of the show. We'll be taking your messages on WhatsApp, Facebook, and Twitter as we go along on the program this morning. Be rest assured that we will do that. Yesterday, a ruling was delivered on the outcome of the February 23, 2019 election involving the 2 presidential candidates of the APC, President Muhammadu Buhari and Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party of the PDP. The Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, had declared President Buhari the winner of the 2019 presidential election. Now, according to the electoral body, Buhari polled 15,191,847 votes, while Atiku polled 11,262,978. That's leaving us with a margin of 3,928,869 votes. On March 18, 2019, Atiku filed petition to challenge Buhari's victory. Atiku and his party claimed that they won the election, citing a presidential election result allegedly gotten from INEC's server. Atiku claimed he scored 18,356,732 votes to defeat Buhari, whom he claimed scored 16,741,430 votes. And having heard the arguments of the PDP and Atiku, Buhari, APC and INEC, the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal fixed Wednesday yesterday, September 11, to deliver a ruling on the winner of the 2019 presidential election.
So on the show today, like we told you, we have Barrister Bolanle Olugbani here, who's a constitutional lawyer as well as a public affairs analyst. Would also be joined by Ademola Sadiq Esquire, who's a state legal advisor for the APC in Lagos, as well as Mr. Segun Showumi, who's a spokesman of the PDP presidential campaign in 2016. He also contested for the post of NPS of the PDP. They will be joining us. But first, let's give you an update from the FEC meeting yesterday. We talked about this during the chit-chat and the front pages. The head of news in Abuja, Philip Nweli, was at the FEC meeting, which lasted for a very long time yesterday. Philip, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning.
Top on the list of the things people are arguing about from the FEC meeting yesterday is the increase in tax from 5%, VAT now, from 5% to 7.2%. Was there a long debate about this, or was this just unanimously agreed at the meeting?
Honestly, I think it was a lengthy debate because at about 12 in the afternoon, the Ministry of Budget, Finance, Budget and National Planning went in to brief the cabinet, and that lasted till about 8 p.m. when they came out to address us. So that was the issue they took. Quickly, there are 3 items were considered yesterday. First was the road project and some rail projects that were approved. The projects on the road were spread all across the federation, and then that of rail, part of Lagos, and as we progress, I will list those ones out. But for the budget, the budget is a major thing.
Right.
The federal government, president, when he was inaugurating the cabinet, did tell them that they want to go back to the budget cycle, and that was why the Federal Executive Council meeting did not hold for the past 2 weeks. This is the 3rd week after inauguration that the FEC is holding, and budget was a major thing they considered because immediately the National Assembly reconvened, they will be presenting the budget. So that was why yesterday they debated the medium-term expenditure framework and then the fiscal strategy paper.
Was there any talk around the 2019 budget? I mean, that's not even in place. We've not implemented that yet, and we're talking about 2020.
Yeah, it was talked. I think she said they achieved 58% performance, and then
5.8 or 6.8.
5.8, and then on the performance was 4.2. You know, the fiscal medium-term expenditure framework is where all the items that will be done or spent, all the items that will be executed in the budget are spelled out. Right. Because it helps to maintain discipline, allocate resources to projects, and prioritize them. Right. Now, when that was considered, the minister brought up the issue of VAT. From what she said, in 2020, the federal government intends to spend 10.07 trillion naira for its services. She explained that it's 3% lower than that of 2019, and there will be statutory transfer, recurrent expenditure, salaries, pensions, social intervention, and so on and so forth. Another major aspect of the expenditure for next year is that it was predicated on $55 per barrel. Right. And then 2.18 million barrels per day production, and then an exchange rate of 305 naira per US dollar.
Okay, you also told us yesterday that the FEC meeting took quite longer than usual. Usually the meeting would end about 3. Did you anticipate that they were probably waiting for the results of the tribunal, the judgment to be given?
We think so, because nobody actually anticipated that the FEC meeting would, stay up till 8 p.m. because, because the tribunal, the verdict was on, we had thought that, okay, maximum if they resume by 11, they will just end 12, 1 or 2, or max 3:30. That was what we projected. But before you knew it, they went on a recess, a short break, came back, and the thing kept dragging. Journalists were worried. Nobody who give you information. We were following the tribunal verdict.
What was the mood right after the results, the judgment was given at the tribunal? Well, was there jubilation or any form of?
I don't know what happened inside the council chamber, because after the opening session, they asked journalists out, so we can't really say what happened, because immediately after the verdict, about 30-40 minutes later, they came out to address us.
Right.
We don't really know what transpired in there.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you so much for the update. Let's head over and speak with Abayomi Akimbola, who was at the tribunal yesterday and who is giving us a live update also from Abuja. Abayomi, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
You were at the tribunal yesterday. What was the mood after that judgment was given?
Well, just as expected, the mood will always be in two ways. One party will always be happy, and the other party will be sad. So that was exactly what happened there yesterday. But for me, I think on the part of the APC, they actually came with a prepared speech. So this, for some, they argue that they already knew. Perhaps they already had, a chat with the judges before the verdict, and that was why they prepared their speech. But on the other hand, I looked at it as a situation like that is always a two-way thing. So maybe they had two speeches, one for if it was positive, and the other for
if it went the other way.
Yeah. So that's for me, it's not. But the general feeling, what I think, one lesson I learned there is, I think our lawyers need to learn not just to argue theoretically, they need to understand also the technicalities in our laws, because that was what the judges ruled upon.
Oh, we have a lawyer with us here in the studio. Thank you very much, Abayami, for that update. Thank you so much. Barrister Bolanle Olugbani is here with us in the studio, and you had a good laugh. I've heard a lot of reports about why did they have a speech, and it was even typed. It looked like it was about 3 pages long or thereabouts, and the lawyer took his time, even joking with the justices and saying, "You're a young man. When you grow up, I want to be like you." And so, it had his day. But as a lawyer, is that out of place? Having a prepared speech in an anticipated judgment?
Well, from the standpoint of the law, it would appear to be inappropriate. But from the standpoint of public relations and public opinion, it would appear to be in place. Because, as the earlier speaker said, your correspondent, it could have gone either way. So, one speech could have been prepared to celebrate or to rejoice at a favorable judgment. Another one would have been to also refuse to accept that justice has been done and that we are going on appeal.
Right.
So, depending on which way it went, it could have been either way. But the idea that you are pulling out a speech
typed and
prepared,
nuanced.
Let's
talk about the judgment overall. What's your thoughts about the judgment?
I haven't seen a copy of the judgment, but I've had different perspectives over the last 12 hours that I have had to read from other people's opinion, where the emphasis was on the technicality of the provisions of the law, and those technicalities eventually led to the conclusions that the judges made. So, but technicalities, be that as it may, the essence of justice is to do substantial justice.
Right.
Technicality, and this is the position of the Nigerian Supreme Court, technicalities should not in any way prevent the doing of actual substantial justice. If, from all of the facts, and indeed the law, it appears that somebody who has a claim before a court has satisfied, largely all of what needs to be satisfied for him to get a judgment, it will be a high level of injustice for you to rule on a technicality, like for instance, that he did not sign something properly, or he did not. My example.
I've heard ridiculous, opinions as much as you didn't come early, you didn't sign here or there. Are those things not important?
They are very important, and those are grounds for which a petition could be thrown out, because the standard of proof in a petition is actually almost equal, but in a civil way, to a proof beyond reasonable doubt in a criminal charge, so that you who are petitioning a election petition tribunal that you want the elections reversed must be on the fact that there was substantial non-conformity with the provisions of the Electoral Act by the person you are suing, that the number of votes that have been cast do not tally with what was actually happening on ground, and that the level of disruption in particular polling booths were such that had disruption not occurred, you ought to have won.
Yeah.
And as such, if those votes were taken into account, or if those votes were knocked out, it would have gone in your favor.
Right.
So it's a very high standard, and for a tribunal to rule that a rerun should be done and the election should be invalidated or a petition should be upheld, the petitioner must do a lot of homework to ensure that he satisfies not only the likely technical side, but also merges the facts on the ground with what the law provides.
We'll come back to you in a moment, Barrister Bolanle. Let's bring on now Ademola Sadiq Esquire, the State Legal Advisor, APC Lagos, who joins us via the phone now. Mr. Ademola, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning to you, Nigerians.
Let's begin with the judgment of yesterday. What's your thought?
Yes, I think great kudos to the judges of the Court of Appeal. Most of their findings, most of their conclusions, will enhance our jurisprudential development on election matters. We lawyers, we always see that election matters are sui generis. That is, they are in a class of their own. In point of time and in point of proving is a whole Herculean task on the petitioner. It's almost looking impossible in Nigeria to prove, to upturn an election in a presidential election for that matter. We have experience in the House of Assembly, petitions in House of Assembly, House of Rep, even senatorial. To upturn those elections, you have a lot to prove. You have, in most cases, you even have to bring in the polling agent, the party polling agent at the polling unit.
So why is it so? Why is it almost impossible to be able to prove your case beyond reasonable doubt, especially in the event of presidential election?
Yes, impossible does not mean that it's not possible. It is possible, but it is an Herculean task.
Why?
No, that is the provision of the law. He who alleges must prove. And the level of proof, as my learned brother on the other side said, though election matter is regarded as a civil matter. And, just probability, proof beyond, level of probability is it. But when you go to the extent of making criminal allegations, which in most cases, is what is usually contained in the election petition. When you say somebody rigged the election, it's a criminal allegation.
Right. We're still expecting to have Mr. Segun Showumi join us over the phone. He's a spokesman of the PDP presidential campaign. We really hope that he can join us. He promised to join us. But let me tell you, Nigerians, yesterday the judgment was passed by the tribunal of a 5-man bench led by the tribunal chairman, Justice Mohammed Garba of the Lagos Division of the Court of Appeal, who was a presiding justice. There are other members on that bench. Justice Abdul Aboki of the Abuja Division of the Court of Appeal, Justice Joseph Ikeng of the Benin Division of the Court of Appeal, Justice Samuel Oseji of the Lagos Division of the Court of Appeal, and Justice Peter Ige of the Abuja Division of the Court of Appeal. Quoting the tribunal, the petitioners have not proved any grounds of the petition in paragraph 15 of the petition. Therefore, the entire petition filed by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, who had challenged the victory at that election in February 23rd, 2019. The whole petition was dismissed. Buhari, according to this judgment, eminently qualified to contest presidential election, according to the tribunal. Barrister Bola Olugbani, let's look at the highlights of the petition itself.
Right.
One of the very big points settled on the issue of the certificate. And then the court, in what many people would say is a two-sided opinion, on one hand said the evidence brought in by the army saying that the certificate was not with them could not be taken into consideration because no person from the army was present to give that evidence. So it has to be discountenanced because of the evidence act. However, another part of that evidence was taken in by the same court. Don't you think this might be sufficient ground to appeal this judgment? And really, what does the law say about having a certificate to contest elections?
For you to be eligible to contest for any elective office, especially the presidency, there are guidelines and there are rules and there are laws concerning that. For the presidency of Nigeria, you must be at least 40 years. You must not be insane. You must not have been convicted of any offense, and you must have a minimum qualification of school cert or its equivalent, that is City and Guilds, trade test, things that are equivalent to 5 credits at WAEC. So once you have that, you are qualified to contest. Now, in the case of President Muhammadu Buhari, it appears that the certificate that is the equivalent of the WAEC has not been found. I know that WAEC issued him one at a later stage when the controversy was raging, I think probably last year or just before the elections of this year. And that was deemed to be sufficient enough to cure the defect. But the idea is that he ought to have a certificate that he used to join the Nigerian army. If he could not present that, it means that that area of having the requisite certificate to contest the election was not satisfied.
However, this seems to clash with the Electoral Act.
Yes.
So this were the arguments put forward by lawyers. Say the Electoral Act, however, does not specify that you must provide your certificate. It all just says that your party must put you forward. But INEC claims that the candidate does not have to present his or her certificate to INEC to contest. However, the Constitution says you must have a certificate. Which is superior here, the Constitution or the Electoral Act?
Anything that is in contravention of the Constitution is null and void. In fact, a state or local government law that contradicts the Constitution is null and void. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the ground norm, the most superior law.
Right.
So once the Constitution says something, makes a provision, it is still superior to the Electoral Act. And so to make the legal argument that you need not present when the Constitution says you must have, beggars the question that lawyers are just engaging in what you call brilliant arguments. So,
but that brilliant argument won yesterday.
Yes, the brilliant argument may have been upheld by that first strata of the Election Petition Tribunal. We do not know, and I do not want to preempt the Supreme Court on the matter, because a ground of appeal can be formulated from that.
Right.
Meaning that the evidence or the issue that was contended before the first tribunal does not, that is the facts that were put forward or that were petitioned against, and the finding of the tribunal itself are not in sync. So if, for instance, the tribunal misdirected itself in the way and manner it addressed the issue, it's an appealable ground.
But Mr. Ademola, the APC seems to be excited about this. The issue of this certificate is not going away anytime soon. The president has not presented the certificate. In fact, some people have argued that it might amount to lying, either to the INEC or to the court for saying he had a certificate when he cannot provide it. The army also said he does not have any certificates with them, while he claims his certificate is with the army. Do you think Nigerians would forget about this issue based on this judgment by the tribunal?
Yes, it will be very interesting to listen to what Supreme Court will say about that. The tribunal, honorable tribunal, has come to the conclusion that you don't need to present the certificate. If you look at the provision of the law, it says school cert or its equivalent to the satisfaction of INEC. To the satisfaction of INEC. And if INEC has gone through his record, and if you can even...
But there was no school cert presented to INEC. That's the issue here.
If you listen to the judgment yesterday, they went through all the entirety of his record. And even the military training he has gone through, supersedes the requirement. Even a primary school holder who has gone through, who has worked for 10 years in an institution is qualified. There is no big deal about all this school start thing.
Is that right, Barrister Olugbani? Barrister Olugbani seems to disagree with you on this one.
If you look at, if you go through the record of someone, and you see that he is even more qualified than a school cert holder, it is allowed.
But the Constitution says must have a school living certificate. How do you prove that you went to secondary school without a certificate? Barrister Olugbani,
and the report from the military said he could not have entered, he could not have been enrolled in the military service without the certificate. And they even went ahead to quote the scores, the grades he attained at school cert level.
However,
so if there is no school cert certificate, where could they have gotten the grades?
But Barrister,
is called so some credits in certain subjects, and they pass in one subject. It shows that they pass.
Hold on a moment. Before we go on a break, Barrister Bola, let me ask you this. So the tribunal said something yesterday that got Nigerians talking by saying that Buhari not only qualified but eminently qualified. Can you break that down for us? What does it mean to be eminently qualified?
Well, it's their own interpretation of the extent or degree of their perception of the fact that he's qualified. If they say he's eminently qualified, it means that he's more than qualified to hold
Sufficiently qualified.
it's not sufficiently, it's more than, exceedingly qualified to hold the position of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So they have, in one way or the other, tried to lay to rest the certificate saga. The certificate saga could have been cured by applying for a certified true copy of his result, if indeed he had lost the result.
The original copy.
And I think to that extent, WAEC has said something about that we may not be able to locate his certificate, but we have records that say he has so scores from so exam at so time. So that should be sufficiently okay for him to be able to overcome that hurdle. So from that standpoint, that appears to have been laid to rest, because the law requires a minimum or standard of proof to be able, if you cannot find the original, which is the primary evidence,
right,
the secondary evidence will be the certified true copy, and it is admissible in law.
And let's also make clear very clearly here that we actually are expecting Segun Shomi, the spokesperson of the PDP presidential campaign in the 2016, he contested for post of MPS of the PDP in 2016 as well. We're expecting him to join us on the program this morning so we can have a balanced conversation. We're still trying to reach out to him. Hopefully he'll be able to join us before we wrap up the show. But right now we need to go on a break, and we'll be right back in a moment. I'm Sheriff Quadry. Please stay on the line, please stay on the line.
Yeah, we have a message also from the PDP camp from Mrs. Sani Olushola, who insinuates that they are reviewing the judgment, and until then they might not be able to speak with the media, but we will keep trying if we can get them on. But we have on the line Mr. Adewuni Sadiq, who's a state legal advisor of the APC in Lagos. Barrister Bolanle Olugbani is also here with us in the studio. More of these conversations, we look more into the details of the judgment and why it was dismissed in its totality just after this break. Do join us again.
From your number one talk news and sports station, this is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff. From your number one talk news and sports station. This is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff.
Conversation did not stop during that break. We had it going on in the studio, looking at all the sides of the case, and we still have Barrister Bolanle Olugbani with us here in the studio. On the line, we have Ademola Sadiq Esquire, who's a state legal advisor of the APC in Lagos. However, it appears that the PDP would like to look at this judgment more critically before they make media appearances as to exactly what they would do. Although yesterday, after the tribunal, representatives of the PDP said that they would be appealing this and taking this over to the Supreme Court, which is, of course, allowed under the law. Let me start off with you, Barrister Ademola. Now, Nigerians are saying that this case was prejudged, could be prejudged by the removal of the CJN then, Onogen, right before the elections. During that time, Nigerians anticipated that there might be a need for a tribunal and a need to take this case to the Supreme Court. And of course, let's say the controversial installation, if you put it that way, of Chief Justice of Nigeria, Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad. If this case goes on to the Supreme Court, he would have to, of course, sit on this issue. What do you say about the removal of CGN Onogen, and does it have any correlation with this case at all?
Yes. I think Nigerians, we have to be extremely careful with the way we handle matters. Issues that will be treated independently of the other. Now, even the former CJ Onogen did not deny the allegations leveled against him. He did not deny. And in all the cases, he has lost, even up to Supreme Court. So that's a separate issue entirely. We should praise the government for acting. If the president has not acted on that, and you continue to have such a man as the CJ of Nigeria, then, we are losing it. So that issue should be treated separately. And I'm glad the court has vindicated the actions of the president on Onogen. Is good regards to bad rubbish. We cannot afford to continue to condone corruption. Once we continue to have conducive, we'll continue to have a permissive attitude to corruption. It will go on and it will destroy the whole nation. So, an institution like the judiciary should not be seen in that light. We should not engage in common on the street, attitude of it. Because this one is going to happen, that's why this is happening. No, that's not the attitude. That's a very wonderful institution, the Supreme Court, the judiciary of Nigeria. And nobody is going to anticipate that the election petition will eventually go to the Supreme Court, and because of that, we should remove the head of the Supreme Court first. No, that is not the way to look at it.
However, in politics, there are permutations, and people predict how things would go. Or could it go this way? What would happen? If it goes the other way, what could happen? Yes.
Yeah. Assuming Onogen are not committed to offense, who will have removed this?
That's a good point.
That's a good question, actually.
Who would have removed him?
Barrister Bola, let me come to you here. One of the prayers of ATIKU.
I'd like to make a comment on that.
All right, go on, please.
Yes, I do not agree that the President of the Federal Republic complied with the law in the removal of Walter Onogen, the former Chief Justice. There is a provision of the Constitution that says that if there's any infraction committed by that high-level judicial officer, the head of the judiciary of Nigeria, he must be reported to the National Judicial Council.
Yes.
National Judicial Council, after making a report.
Hold on, Ms. Sadiq.
Yes, we'll come back to you.
After looking into the matter and making their findings, we'll make a recommendation to the President. The President, with concurrence of the Senate, will then remove the Chief Justice of Nigeria. The President, in fact, under the Constitution, has no power to suspend the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He's the head of an arm of the federal government of Nigeria, the co-equal arm. He cannot do it without concurrence with the legislature, which is the House of Reps and the Senate. The Senate, in this particular fact, they won with the constitutional power to delve into the matter of his removal. So there was a misstep somewhere. It was preemptive. It was done in such a manner that I think was very, very clumsy legally, and it led to all of the allegations of tribalism, of some form of nepotism, some form of political permutation about this particular petition, which was likely to come up, and Nigerians went, wide afield, thinking all those things because the government didn't do what they were supposed to do in the legal manner that was provided for by law.
Right.
So they created the perception, they created the problem, and they didn't follow due process in the removal of that man.
But
you will also recall
Yes.
that
Can I react to that?
hold on.
Just 1 minute.
Just 1 minute.
from
Just
a
1 minute.
certain $300 million or kiliko or some number of houses, all of a sudden, at the finding of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, all those allegations were drastically reduced. Now, from about maybe 50 houses, it became 5 houses. From $300 million or $30 million, it became $3 million.
In fact, Justice Onogen then insisted that he had finally declared his assets.
Yes.
It was just not done when it should.
Yes.
Right.
When he remembered,
Yes.
he
Yes.
then...
Yes, but you
That
see,
is the offense.
but you
That
see,
is the offense.
but you see, even
That
though,
is the offense.
even though as a high judicial officer, the highest judicial officer in the land, he ought not have
to have made such a
made
mistake.
such a
Right,
mistake.
right.
It was
That
a
is the offense.
perfect excuse for calling a dog a bad name,
name.
just to hang it.
However, Barrister Ademola, you would agree that this might be arguably the biggest, case in the judiciary for this year. That is what we opened 2019 with, and it went on for months. But you would agree, like Barrister Olugbani has said, that the president also did not recur to the National Judicial Council, and of course there were arguments.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Let's separate the issues. The one you report to the National Judicial Council would be when a judge commits an offense in the course of duty, in the course of judicial duty. But this one is an offense against Code of Conduct Act. They are separate.
But you see, the Code of Conduct Act.
If a judge commits an offense in the course of performing his duty as a judicial officer,
Yes.
that is where you go to the National Judicial Council.
Yes, but the Code of Conduct Act
is
is not superior.
Is the head of the Judicial Council.
Yes,
The
the code,
CJ, no, let me just add. Incidentally, the CJ himself is the chairman of the Judicial Council.
yes, the Code of Conduct Act.
How do you report a chairman of the Judicial Council to his council, to the council that is heading?
Sorry, my learned friend. The code.
That is even where he commits an offense in the course of performing judicial function.
Yes, can I just make this point, my learned
But
friend?
in this case, now it's a code of conduct matter. It is
code of-
separate from offenses that you report to the National Judicial Council.
Yes, with all due respect, my learned friend, the Code of Conduct Act is not superior to the Constitution. It is the Constitution
It is not, yes.
that expressly states in its very, 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 very sacrosanct letters the procedure for the removal of a CJN, notwithstanding whether he committed the act under the Code of Conduct Act or some criminal law of the Federation of Nigeria. If you must remove a CGM for any reason, there's a process and procedure for removing him. For the executive arm of government to have jumped the gun in their haste to hang the highest judicial officer in the land and thereby create a ripple effect of all manner of perception, all manner of allegations, including the final outcome at the Election Petition Tribunal of the 2019 elections, was created by the executive arm.
Lawyers can never agree on this one.
Yes.
For months, from January till about April, even during the elections, this argument,
The debate went on and on. So, gentlemen, but
Let's not lose focus.
gentlemen, for want of time, let's go back to the tribunal. And Barrister Bolani, let me come to you on this one. And this is one of the most important pillars upon which the tribunal delivered its verdicts yesterday, and that's about the INEC server. ATIKU prayed the tribunal, for over INEC server, for him to for his own result from the INEC server to be admitted, and the tribunal said it's a no, and they said it's not enough.
My humble opinion about that is that the basic provision of the Evidence Act with regards to the admissibility of evidence is the relevance of the evidence.
Right.
Including if the evidence was obtained illegally. That is, relevance is the basis of admissibility.
So it doesn't matter whether he obtained those figures
whether he got it from
legally
the
or illegally.
The computers of the CIA who hacked the INEC server, whether he got it from the FBI, wherever he got it from. It is not enough for INEC to declare that they had no servers and such results were not produced or transmitted through their servers, when in actual fact, INEC officials gave evidence that they indeed collected results and sent it via the INEC system to the server. So,
which they later denied doing.
Yes, which they later denied doing. But you must also remember that in the effort to deny, in the defense of INEC led no evidence. When the petitioner had concluded his evidence, when it was the turn of INEC to begin their own case, they said they relied on the evidence given so far.
Of the petitioner.
Case. They rested their case on the case of the petitioner. And to me, for such a weighty allegation to have been made by a petitioner in the highest election of the land, INEC not being able to vigorously defend their own integrity and credibility about their processes and their procedures, and the facts being alleged against them before an election petition tribunal, a tribunal of first instance in the presidential election, gives me the impression that there's some level of incompetence. I don't want to say collusion because collusion is not a crime, but I think there's a level of there's a level of incompetence.
I want to ask you again before I go to Barrister Sadiq. You will. But just a moment. Yes. ATIKU prayed the court to allow him inspect INEC server, and the court said no.
Well, that's an arguable ground. That's an arguable ground.
Hold on, Barrister Sadiq. Hold on, Barrister Sadiq. Hold on. We'll come to you. We'll come to you, Barrister Sadiq. Just hold on.
That should form a ground of appeal if it has not already been determined conclusively by the Supreme Court. If it is an issue canvassed and the tribunal of first instance ruled against it, made a decision, and the Supreme Court has not already made a decision on that, because I know that when that preliminary ruling was made by the tribunal of first instance, ATIKU rushed to the Supreme Court. I think that was a mistake, a technical mistake in law. At the point where the tribunal refused to rule in your favor regarding the INEC servers, I think that ATIKU should have waited and concluded that would be a ground of appeal at the Supreme Court. So, but once that issue had been determined by the Supreme Court, definitively, it can no longer be a ground of appeal.
Indeed.
Okay, Barrister Sadiq, here is your moment. The server issue, of course, INEC, there are so many videos. I mean, we did extensive coverage of the elections, and there were videos and, instances where INEC officials came on different fora to say they were going to use the server to electronically transmit results, and then so they can check this with the manual results to ensure there were no discrepancies. However, INEC turned around to say they did not use the server because it's not even permitted by the Electoral Act, which was not attested to by the president. So the argument is the president did not sign it just before the elections, so this confusion could occur. But what does this tell us, really?
Yes. I think in Nigeria, in the Nigerian DNA, to be ever at all times.
It is in the DNA of Nigerians.
It is in the DNA of Nigerians, generally suspicious of moves as chefs of government. And
don't you think those are just predictions? And they are...
No. That is the truth. I name the people a lot.
Yeah.
And it should be governed by law.
Okay.
Electoral has not made provision for electronic transmission of results. If INEC has gone ahead to do that, Nigerians will raise issues again.
However, in INEC's budget, there was provision for electronic transmission for servers.
So that settles the issue of cyber. That settles the issue of the issue that was raised up and up, even up to Supreme Court. They went to the appeal to Supreme Court, as my Lane brother said. So the issue, once the law does not make provision for electronic transmission of results, that settles that issue. That is the end of that. The issue is dead at that point.
However, if INEC had then gone against the law and then used the server, isn't that an issue?
Yes, it will have been an issue. It will have been an issue if INEC has transmitted results by electronically. So I think we should just relax and have a little bit of trust in people who are in government and institutions. It's no use raising suspicions and building on that suspicion as if the suspicion is true.
Right.
No,
Okay.
it's not losing.
Okay, so we have Mr. Segun Showumi joining us finally. Just before we go to the phones to take some comments, I hope we can. He's a spokesman of the PDP presidential campaign. I believe he's been listening to this conversation and decides to join in. Good morning, Mr. Showumi.
Okay. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm sure
Good
you've
morning.
listened to all the conversation we've had for the past in the past hour, and the APC.
I've not been able to listen to you, but I have an idea that the audience would have been very, very active, and everybody would have been weighing in according to their own opinion.
Absolutely. We have with us Mr. Ademola Sadiq, who's a state legal advisor of the APC in Lagos, and also Barrister Bolanle Olugbani, who's a constitutional lawyer. And we've debated issues around the removal of the CJN earlier in the year. We've also discussed the issues around the Electoral Act and the use of the server, the issues around the certificates, which everything the tribunal struck out yesterday. What does the PDP feel about the judgment?
Well, the position of the PDP, I guess, has been well captured in their press release, which they gave out immediately. Their view is that, of course, the judgment was a miscarriage of justice. They feel that their case was not were properly adjudicated upon and all that. So I think the PDP position is well known. If you want to now know what my position and the ATIKU position is, then I can then go right ahead to...
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead with that.
Now, I think first things first is important that I say very clearly and emphatically that when His Excellency Atiku had decided after the elections to go to the tribunal, three critical things were in his mind. The first is that the probation the court would go to the tribunal on that matter, Jonathan did. So 2019 it was important for us.
Mr. Showumi, I'd like you... Hello, Mr. Showumi. Could you maybe change your position? Your line is breaking and we really would like to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, this
Yes,
is better. You'd have to recap, please.
I said when the president decided to go to the tribunal in 2019 after the election, three things the audience and the Nigerians must bear in mind. You are not going to be able to deepen the jurisprudence, figure out precisely what the position of the law is, get an interpretation of these things outside the court. So taking cases to court gives the judges all those opportunities to do that. And in 2015, because the PDP did not go to court under Jonathan, it meant that to a large extent, presidential elections and all that have not been weighed in about 8 or so years. So it was important that Atiku did that.
Right.
The second reason is that sometimes when you feel aggrieved about an election and everybody comes up with all their opinions, people say they won, everybody says they get cheated and all that, you have to make sure that you're able to diffuse the tension and hold it in. Otherwise, people will resort to self-help. One of the lines you throw at the people to make sure that everybody behaves themselves and calmly manages the situation is to go to court. In that case, you can then tell them, oh, gentlemen, everybody calm down. We're in court, let the court go on it. And the process of the court takes a bit of time. So sometimes you can allow free now to reasonably calm. It was a decision also to do that. But the third and most important reason was that it is important for the court to be able to speak unequivocally on their interpretations of significant things that took place in that election. Obviously, they have done that now. We'll get the report or the court judgment in a couple of days and we'll study it very well. It's not a position, it's not the attitude of our camp to jump into, oh, we don't agree, or yes, we agree, or we cower. No. When we get to it, on the immediacy, what we feel is wrong now is that it appears to us that what has taken place is some kind of forum shopping. Now, forum shopping in law will be a situation where the best way you can get a favorable judgment in a court and you target the position that your case will be adjudicated upon by those that are, of course, favorably disposed to you or those that you have forum shopped. And the reason why we're able to say that could have happened is that, first of all, the Nugget case, which is created its own challenges for the judiciary. Then the Ademola case and all of the cases around Ojerophobia and all of those lawyers that were Gestapo. So a bit of fear could have been done. Then the situation with Baba Chia, the woman that has to Her Excellency the Lord Justice that has to be recused from the case. Then you heard the judgment. On almost everything, you saw that the judges, they rule the way they rule, and we must be careful not to defile the integrity of the entire country because of some opinion. But we think that they have not been very, very
They haven't thought deeply about the implication of what they have done.
They took 178 days out of the specified 180. You think they didn't think deeply about this?
No, I'll tell you what I mean. There's something called the doctrine of experience for lawyers, for judges. At the highest level of the judiciary, there is a conversation as to when a case comes before a judge, should the judge use his opportunity of adjudicating on that case to also weigh in heavily of the law? For instance, when I mean they've not thought about it, do you know the full implication of saying absolutely that you don't really need to produce results? Do you know the full implication of saying that it doesn't matter if you show an affidavit on the form, it can be overlooked even when it could have been done differently? Do you know the full implication of saying that stacking the options of going to a tribunal for a presidential election a lot against one party? What do I mean by that? When you are going for election, INEC has the responsibility of being the ombudsman for everybody. They have to be the ombudsman of both PDP, APC, and every other party. Now, when there's a dispute in the election, you suddenly see INEC run into the corner of one of the parties and leave one party as though that one party that they are running into his corner was the person that they were supposed to be serving. Then you see quite a lot. But suffice to say, Nigerians should calm down. Our country is a work in progress.
But we need to move on quickly. But let me ask you, which is one of the questions we debated very hotly in the studio, the removal of CJN Onogen. People have done permutations, and the current CJN, who is Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, do you have confidence in the Supreme Court when you push your case forward there?
Sometimes you push your case forward, not because you have confidence or you don't have confidence. Sometimes you push your case forward so that the entire society can live with its hypocrisy. When you push a case to court, and even children can be asking questions, and the judiciary in Nigeria is saying that you don't need to have certificates, or it doesn't matter if you have lied of a fundamental nature to not in practice, or it doesn't matter if the commander-in-chief has given instructions to his troops, and they go ahead and do all sorts of dastardly things that he cannot take responsibility.
Can I wait on this?
Okay, no, we are totally out of time now. But of course, we will bring this conversation up again next week. But we are absolutely out of time. We must go now. Thank you so much, Mr. Segun Showunmi, for joining us on the show. We'll see if we can bring him back again next week. There are so many angles to this, and lawyers can never agree on this. But the tribunal has given its judgment, and for now, that is the law. So unless it is disputed at the Supreme Court. Barrister Bolanle Olugbani, thank you so much for joining us on the show. You want to say something, but we're really out of time. Also, Barrister Ademola Sadiq, who's a state legal advisor, APC Lagos, thank you so very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Nigeria, we have been live on Facebook and on YouTube. We see your calls coming in, but you see how hot it's been on the Morning Crossfire today. We will bring this conversation back so that we can have more comments from our listener, and we'll see if Barrister Olugbani can come back so he can make more of his opinions known to you.
Right.
There are so many things to talk about, but we must go right now. The FEC meeting, 7.2% VAT. I'm sure Tunji Andrews is itching to talk about that just after the news at 9 on the Money, Business and Economy. Big thanks to Zainab Yakin, Tosin Akinride, Yvonne Ohaifo for all assisting on the show. I'm Wemimo Adewuni. Let's keep talking on Twitter at Wemimo Sports.
I'm Sheriff Quadry. You can follow me on social media at Sheriff Quadry.
We'll see you tomorrow.